Well, welcome back to the Marketing Gateway. I'm Sean in St. Louis, and with me are my production team. We have Trish, who is our scheduler and also our office manager, and we have Holly, who is our production assistant and also on our research team here at RPG. So happy to have you both. I have talked about before how, I don't want you guys to be invisible. You are part of what we do, and I'm really grateful to you both for the work that you put in. And hey, we've got over 50 episodes now. So, that's been a lot of hard work over the last few months to get there. So fantastic. Well, we were going to do this before the holidays, and time got away from us. We had a lot going on, but I thought it'd be really fun to get the three of us together and to talk a little bit about some of the brands that we grew up with and that we remember. Because, part of marketing is thinking about how the products and services and things like that intersect with our lives. And I didn't want to talk about just any brands. I wanted to talk about some that Trish and I are more likely to remember. I wanted to talk about some that maybe Holly's a little more familiar with, and some that, maybe two of us know and the other person doesn't know, or one of us knows, the other two don't know. So I thought it'd be fun just to kind of see how they've intersected. So why don't we start off by talking a little bit about Kmart? So Kmart, was a pretty big deal when I was growing up. And of course, nowadays you're lucky to even see a Kmart, let alone be able to go in one and experience what it's all about. So Trish, you probably remember Kmart, right?
I do.
So what does Kmart mean to you?
It reminds me of my childhood because that's where my parents shopped a lot because it was very close to our home at the time. And I feel like I remember going to Kmart more often than Walmart even growing up, but it's very nostalgic, let's say.
And, Holly, for you, is Kmart anything that you intersected with?
Yeah, so I know I've watched a lot of like videos about like the blue light specials and stuff, and I think those were before my time, but I definitely do remember my mom taking us to Kmart quite a bit. And I remember the Kmart that we would go to a lot is had a Little Caesars in it. So we would beg my mom to take us to Little Caesars after we went to Kmart and stuff. So
I remember begging my mom for the slushies in the checkout line, and she would dread going through the checkout line because she would know once we got there we would all start crying for those slushies, and they knew what they were doing. They always had those kids crying for slushies, and we got them too.
When you hear the words blue light special, what does that mean to you?
Walmart, right?
So blue light special actually was the Kmart
It
thing.
was
Yeah.
Kmart.
So they would announce it in the store. You guys ever remember hearing that? So they would say there's a blue light special on toasters, or something like that. And they would maybe have them on an end cap. And sometimes I think at one point they even had a blue light that would turn on where the sale was going on. You guys ever remember hearing those?
I remember hearing about the blue light special, but I don't. Like I thought it was Walmart.
I like I said, I've seen videos about like retail archaeology, I guess you could say, and they talk about the blue light special, but I don't think that I think that was before my time a little bit, or at least like I never I never got to experience it live, I guess you could say.
Yeah. I feel like I was maybe too young to care about the blue light special at the time.
Right.
That was mom's job. She needed the sales. I just needed to tag along.
I needed
stuff in the cart. Yeah.
I know probably around the early 2000s, Kmart went all in on Martha Stewart, and they were trying to kind of pivot to being more of like a less of a discount store and more of like a household goods kind of store. Do you guys remember that at all?
Not really, no.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that when I mentioned that, so like, does that sound like, would you have gone to Kmart for that kind of good, or is it like a higher end household good that had a brand name on it like that? I generally associate them with value, more than anything.
Yeah. I mean, if I think high end, I'm not necessarily thinking Kmart. That's for sure. So maybe, I don't know.
So another brand that was really popular when I was a kid, and it phased out pretty quickly, and that was Swatch watches. Now, Swatch watches were these really colorful, kind of disposable watches. They were more fashion focused than they were for watches. They had plastic bands. They were really bright. I think they came from Sweden. Do you guys remember those kind of watches at all?
I've heard about them, but I never actually owned one or like physically like saw ads for them at all. But I've definitely heard about them.
I don't remember them at all. I remember the slap bracelets.
Slap bracelets.
Yeah.
Oh, one of
Yeah.
the great fads of was it the late 80s, early 90s? When I was in grade school, I remember they were a big deal.
Oh yeah, just kids just slapping them all day, cutting up your wrist.
Every parent feared they were going to take
Yes.
their kid to the hospital for
A slap.
a slap bracelet injury, right? What about Cabbage Patch Kids? That was another big
yes.
fad in the 80s. What do you remember about Cabbage Patch Kids, Trish?
I was a Cabbage Patch Kid for Halloween one year, so I very much loved my Cabbage Patch dolls as a kid growing up. They were my favorite. And it was those old Halloween costumes with like the plastic trash bag and the plastic mask. But I rocked it. I loved it. I was a Cabbage Patch Kid that Halloween and I loved it.
So you were you the at the age where Cabbage Patch Kids, when they first came out, they were notoriously hard to get.
Mm-hmm.
They sold out like crazy. I think it was 1983, 1984, somewhere around there, that people were like beating each other up in stores and paying each other absurd amounts of money to get them for their children for Christmas. Did you have any of these dolls as a kid?
Possibly. I feel like now that you mentioned it, I do vaguely remember my mom like fighting, like not fighting for one, but like making sure like that was the gift of the Christmas, and then she went through the struggle trying to find it, I believe. But I'd have to ask her. I don't really remember because I think I was too young at the time to really know too much of what was going on in the background. But I'll have to ask her. That'll be interesting. I've gone through some of those own struggles with my own kids for like Black Friday sales, when they were younger, but I can only imagine.
Did you have any intersection with Cabbage Patch Kids, Holly?
I did. Obviously not the like original run, but like when I was a kid, I did have some. I distinctly remember like two of the ones that were specifically little babies, and they had the same haircut. And I was like, oh, they're twins. They're my little twins.
Do you remember the way they smelled? They always had like a baby powder smell or something to them too. There's some kind of weird smell.
Yeah. I always thought the little stamp on their butt was kind of funny too.
Well, before Coleco bought them, because Coleco was the toy maker that made them, Coleco, the Connecticut leather company, they somehow got into toys and video games. But the whole idea of Cabbage Patch Kids was they had these birthing centers where it wasn't just a factory; it was like a place where they gave birth to these dolls, and they came with a little birth certificate and everything. So they did all these things to try to make them seem like more than just a doll. Yeah. But what I really remember about them more than anything is the Garbage Pail Kids, which were a parody with these disgusting drawings of really strange looking Cabbage Patch Kid type creatures. We loved those. I was a boy, we had no interest in Cabbage Patch dolls, but Garbage Pail Kids, those were a big deal to us.
They were trading cards. Right?
Yeah, they were. They made a movie too, which is one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. It's fantastic. It's a musical of all things. With these, it is definitely something to watch with a few drinks in hand. But so another fad adjacent to these things was Beanie Babies.
Yes.
What do you guys remember about Beanie Babies? So Beanie Babies are still around, but I mean they went through a moment for a while.
They did, and it was a craze in my house. My grandmother collected them and had tubs and tubs and tubs and tubs on top of tubs of Beanie Babies. I mean, that was the craziest fad. I remember going to the McDonald's and they were giving them out. We had to go through every McDonald's to make sure we got every one of them. And I mean, she probably has some of the rare ones, to be honest. And it was insane how many Beanie Babies we had to go through after she had passed.
Did you guys just focus on the bears, or did you get all the other types of creatures too? Or
no, they were every kind you can imagine. Any kind of animal that they made, she was after. Especially the ones that were harder to get, of course, because that was her thing. She loved collectibles of any sorts. Beanie Babies was a big one.
How about you, Holly? Did you interact with Beanie Babies at all?
Yes, very much so. We did. We had, I think I still have somewhere the Princess Diana bear. And then I also still have the purple platypus because I still like platypus, so I kept it. And then I think my brother, I don't know, they might still be at my parents' house, but I think my brother, when he cleared out his room, he had like 2 or 3 big boxes of them. Yeah. And then My mom used to be really big about taking us to like JCPenney to get our pictures taken. And I remember one year I insisted on having my two little kitty cats in the picture with me. So.
Well, I worked at McDonald's. My first job was working at McDonald's, and I worked at McDonald's when the Teeny Beanie Babies came out the first time. Actually, I worked through several more of those launches as well, but the Teeny Beanie Babies were the smaller version of the actual Thai branded, Beanie Babies, and people were so nuts about them as a collectible that they would come in, and we the day they launched, 6 a.m. when we opened, there was a line out the door for people coming in to buy them, and we weren't even selling them yet because you had to buy a Happy Meal to get them, and so they were just trying to buy Happy Meals, and they would leave the food on the counter and just take the Beanie Babies out, and we had to start limiting people after a while they could only get 6 Happy Meals at a time. And they were only getting, the one or two, toys that we had to offer that day. They weren't even getting the whole set, but they wanted to buy so many of them. But McDonald's had made a rule that we wouldn't just sell them a la carte. You had to buy food. So we made a lot of food that went wasted during that day and that weekend. It was crazy.
I remember it being we were one of those people that said, nope, we have this one already. Can you swap this one out for us, please? So you might have been one of the people that were.
I had people offering me money to grab all of them and give them to them, and what they didn't understand was we didn't have them. Like, they were at the distribution facility in boxes, so we only got them when they were available. So what I did, we got an employee meal, and so I would just get a Happy Meal every day and just get a free Teeny Beanie Baby, and I built a collection of them and sold them to a few people who wanted them.
Yeah.
I was like, well, I'm getting my free food anyway. I might as well, try to make a little bit of profit off of this. I think the best thing I got was an Applebee's gift card from somebody that worked at Applebee's. Not a great endorsement, by the way. I'm not a big fan of Applebee's, but
another free meal.
Hey, it was at least a free meal. I got to take my high school girlfriend out for a meal, so
nice.
that worked out.
I do remember also kind of like a splitting off of that is the Madame Alexandra dolls or whatever they were. I remember my friend's grandmother. We would have dance practice every week, and she came in one week and she was bragging about how, we just went in and we were like, hey, can we just buy the toys? And they let us do it. And so it was the Wizard of Oz ones, I think. And she got the full set of them by just bribing the poor McDonald's worker.
Well, that was the thing, and I worked at McDonald's for many years. Like, if people were nice to us, we were generally happy to help them with those things. I wasn't ever there during the Pokemon stuff, but I've heard Pokemon mania descends on McDonald's, especially now. People are really into the trading cards. Whenever they have those, like, they run out like that.
Really? I didn't know that was still such a big.
Oh yeah. People, even at stores like Target and Walmart today, when they get new Pokemon cards, and people will mob them trying to get the boxes. Yeah. So because people will take scales in and try to weigh them and see if they can find the extra special cards, because they weigh a little bit more.
Yeah.
So they want to buy the boxes before they're even open, so they can try to get the best chances of getting them. It's still a mania for sure.
A real deal. Yes.
Well, another brand that was really popular in the 1980s, and it's kind of made a comeback since, is Polaroid. So Polaroid to me is one of those things where I just remember taking so many crappy pictures with Polaroid cameras, but they were cool because they were instant. You would take a picture and you'd have the picture in your hand a few seconds later. Didn't have to go and have your film developed and find out that all the pictures you'd taken didn't turn out, which was a common thing.
Yeah.
What do you remember about Polaroid cameras, Trish?
The shaking, you got to shake it, man. I remember it was just fun. It's that instant gratification. They're fun to play with. They're fun to make silly photos with, but having that instant photo is, and we got some for we have 4 girls, so we got some for them a few years back, and we still play with it all the time. That's something I always put in their stocking, is that the instant film, the refill.
Do you still have to shake them in order to make them work, or?
The film?
The modern ones, yeah.
I don't think so.
Okay, so they're probably higher technology now than they were then. But yeah, I definitely remember the boxy camera, and the picture was starting to pop out, and you pull it out and shake it to try to make it go faster.
And we still do. I mean, it's habit. It's like, that's what you got to do when you have a Polaroid. You got to shake it. That's just how it goes. It doesn't work if you don't, right?
Did you have a Polaroid camera, Hallie?
Not when I was younger, but when I was in college-ish, my mom did get me one of the newer kind of ones,
Mm-hmm.
and I had one of those, and I really like it. It is still somewhere. It's probably still in a box from when I moved, but I am trying to get back into it because yeah, that instant gratification is really
It's
nice.
fun.
And like
They're cute.
I have so many pictures on my phone that I'm like, oh, I need to print that, and then I just
Right?
never do. So it's like it cuts out that middleman of having to
Yeah.
like go to Walgreens or something.
It is nice just to have that photo. You can just go ahead and put it up and
Mm-hmm.
not have to, like you said, have 20,000 photos in your phone like
Yeah.
I do. But
Well, and you have teenagers. I have teenagers. Well, you have even older than teenagers now because you have some college aged. But kids can take pictures on their phone pretty much as they want, right? So, does it still appeal to them to have those physical pictures that they can print out? Like, I know my kids like to have them as a novelty, but they wouldn't go out of their way to take them. It's just kind of fun to have in the moment. But
they usually will bring them out if they've got friends over, if they're playing around or whatever. But we do have quite a bit of Polaroids that I find throughout the house. When we're cleaning rooms, we'll find them on the beds that have slipped through. But we got the girls like one of the picture boards that they can like clip all of their photos on. So luckily, it's pretty full. It's actually really pretty full. But I just love looking at them.
Mhm.
It's nice to be able to walk by and like, oh yeah. And then they put them in their like little visors and in their cars, and because they're smaller and they're easy to kind of stash away. But yeah, we have them everywhere. So
one of the rules of marketing a lot of times is what's old is new again, right? And things that they fall out of fashion for a little while and then they come back with a vengeance, and sometimes they never go away. I mean, that happened with Star Wars is a great example. Star Wars was a huge thing when I was a little kid, and then everybody got tired of it and it went away, and then it came back in the late 90s, and it's never really gone away since. It's been pretty much around. So I think Polaroid is another one of those things that for a while people didn't really see the utility of it because they had digital cameras, but now digital cameras are so boring because everybody has them that having Polaroid pictures is kind of a novelty.
I was just going to say, I actually thought that digital cameras were coming back to an extent. All my kids had asked for them all of a sudden. I'm like, why do you need a digital camera? You have a phone. Like, why do we need another item to carry around? And they just love it. They think it's fun to play with, and
just having something that is dedicated for being a camera, and they can't text on it. They can't get messages in the middle taking pictures. They can't, listen to music or anything. Just watch what was on the camera.
I think it's just something fun to play with too. It's a new device to hold on to and play with, but it's crazy that they want. I mean, even my other daughter wanted a DVD player this year for Christmas, which I thought was how hard it is to find a DVD player these days. It's insane. It's just not something. It really blew my mind when she asked for it because it's just not up to date. You think that they want the newest, up to date, whatever the electronic is at the moment, but they're going old school. They want vintage, which is insane to think a DVD player is vintage or VCR player.
Well, you probably remember, I'm sure you do too, like when records went out of style. So vinyl records, my dad has a whole bunch of them from his collection. But by the time I was a kid, they were kind of old news. We had cassette tapes and we had CDs. So vinyl went out, like you could find it at, garage sales and swap meets, 10 for $1 or whatever. And now vinyl's made a big comeback, and the vinyl albums are $50, compared to the digital ones that are $10 or less, So if people even buy music anymore, which a lot of them don't.
We jumped on the record player train, and I got the girls a couple record players a couple years ago and a couple records, but they still don't listen to them. I think it was just more of the fad, but they don't really use them or listen to them like they would. Like they still use their phones for everything. So, is it a money scheme? Is it just something fun to have? Physically, it is fun, but I don't know how useful. Practical it really is.
I mean, Kyle's sister got one for Christmas. Ooh, gosh, it's probably been a good couple years since that happened, and I mean, she, from what his mom says, she still uses it. So
I remember my mom playing hers all the time. She loved it. I also probably got the girls crappy record players, so that's probably why it didn't sound very good. So, but yeah, I remember mom putting her headphones on. We had one of those remember the old stereo systems that like took up half the living room because they were so big with all the speakers and all the functions and
Yeah,
so many options.
When we go visit my dad's parents, they have the big stereo system with the record player, and my granddad's rocking chair is right next to it. So every now and again, you'll come into the living room and he'll have his headphones in, and he's just like
jamming out,
listening away.
I love it. I love it.
Well, speaking of music, another brand that got really big in the 80s, and then again in the 90s was Sony's Walkman, and then later on their Discman. And we were kind of talking about this before we started recording, and Holly was like, hey, don't count me out. I had a Discman. So let's talk about the Walkman for a minute. So the Walkman, like, I don't know if I ever had, no, I did have an official one at one point. I definitely had some of the knockoffs, and you could tell the Walkman from the knockoffs because the knockoffs would only be able to play forward, so you could only fast forward to cassette tapes. You couldn't rewind them. The Walkman actually did have the ability to go backwards as well. And later models, like they even had, like if it got to the end of the tape, it would flip over and play the other side of the tape, which was nice. Yeah. Oh, yeah. But the Walkman was really the first device that allowed, on a mass market level anyway, that allowed people to take their music with them. You had transistor radios before that, but you were really at the mercy of whatever they're playing on the radio with a transistor radio. But with a Walkman, you could take your own personal music with you. You could take the albums that you bought or the mixtapes that you'd made or anything like that. Prior to that, it was really just cars that allowed you to have that feature of if you had a portable stereo. They were pretty bulky at the time. So what do you remember at the Walkman, Trish?
Oh, making those mixtapes. All those mixtapes, man. We had a ton of them. And then they would get, every once in a while, they'd get stuck in your player and you'd have to take your pencil out or whatever. And you'd have to rewind the ribbon back or try to uncrinkle it. But yeah, that and then like taking it out, flipping it over, listening to the other side and reading all like the tracks on like the little tiny printed plastic disc or whatever they had.
Now, did you copy off the actual like tapes or did you get songs off the radio? That was
both.
I got them off the radio most of the time.
Casey Kasem's top 40 countdown, I think is what it was that we would get on. So we'd get on and like, okay, it's like the last 10 songs, and we would record them all. And man, you had to be there on time and you had to make sure you got it right. And until your tape recorded, I mean, times you'd go in and be like, oh, it didn't record.
Or you get the DJ cutting in with some nonsense. I had that happen quite a few times. Did you have a Walkman?
My parents did.
Okay.
And I would play with it, but I never like used it for its proper purpose. So I've experienced one. And I did have a tape player in my first car. I drove a Bug and it only had a tape player. So I had to take my dad's tapes, and I listened to a lot of Duran Duran and the Ninja Turtles movie soundtrack.
It was Tom Petty for us. We listened to a lot of that. I remember like when you would buy the cassette, if you bought the actual cassette, it came with the lyrics and everything.
Right.
But when we were recording it off the radio, I remember my brothers and my sister and I like sitting in the living room, and we would stop, rewind the tape, write down the lyrics so we could learn all the lyrics to all the songs, and we would just do that for like an hour until we got through the whole song and knew all the words.
And there are still songs to this day that I remember hearing that I'd recorded off the radio. I didn't know the lyrics, so I just kind of thought what they might be, you know, and there might be things that I didn't really understand as a kid.
I still do that.
So I still misremember a lot of lyrics. Here in St. Louis, I don't know if you would have been around for this, Trish. You definitely weren't around for this, Holly, but we actually had a children's radio station called the Imagination Station, and it was really popular for a few years with kids. And I was in the right age group. I was like 10, 12, before Radio Disney was a thing. And so they had the station here where they just played music for kids. They played like comedy skits and other things that were really different from other things you hear on the radio. We recorded a lot of that stuff. The Ninja Turtles stuff was on there too, by the way. That was right around that era. But that was another nice thing about having these devices was that, if you could find the right source for things, you could copy them and listen to them without even knowing where to buy them. So I thought that was probably one of my favorite things about that era was discovering things and being able to share it with other people by recording it and then playing it for them on your, other devices, which we do all the time now. But back then that was kind of a hard thing to do.
It was.
Well, so we transitioned to the Discman back in the 90s. There were other formats as well, but the Discman was really popular because you could actually take your CDs out of your stereo with you. And that was a pretty big novelty at the time.
And being
So
able to play whatever song you want at any given moment was the big deal. You could go to that track and just hit the button instead of having to listen to the whole tape.
right, yeah, without having to rewind or
all.
fast forward and find that moment again.
That was a big deal.
Yeah, the thing I most remember about that era is the big binders people would have of CDs. So they would buy CDs in the jewel cases. They put the jewel case on the shelf, take the CD out, and put them in these big black binders. And they might take that in their car, or they might have it in their room, but they would have it somewhere with all their music in it. And like visiting people and flipping through their music and looking at what they had was a kind of something that we did a lot. I mean, even in college, that was something that we would
just books,
right?
That Columbia subscription
right,
everybody would get. You just get like hundreds of CDs. It was so cool.
I remember my brother, he might even still have it, honestly, but he used to have all his CDs, and I remember there was one CD, and this was in high school, so this was even like when I was in high school in like the 2010s, so this was still like, and I remember I would like sneak into his room and like steal one of his CDs to like listen to while I was in the shower, and then have to sneak back after and put it back, just so he wouldn't notice. So sorry, John, if you watch this.
Well, we had those formative experiences, but then we also had this crazy thing back in the 80s called New Coke. Now, Holly, I know New Coke, this is something you weren't around for. This happened in like 1985, 1986. But Coca-Cola, and I know a lot about the history of this. I think did we do an episode on this yet? If we haven't, we will. Yeah, Coca-Cola basically decided that they were going to launch a new formula because they were getting beaten up in this thing called the Pepsi Challenge. And the Pepsi Challenge was this TV commercial thing that they would do where they would have like people do these blind taste tests in grocery stores, and they would taste Coke and Pepsi not knowing what they were, and they would almost always prefer Pepsi. And it was great advertising. It was also, as it happens, completely erroneous in terms of how they presented the findings. But Coca-Cola did their own taste test, and they found that people did tend to prefer Pepsi in a setting like that. So they decided to re-engineer their formula to be sweeter, to taste more like Pepsi, and they rolled it out with a lot of fanfare, and everybody hated it. And I remember being a kid, I was a big Coca-Cola drinker when I was allowed to have it, and it was definitely not anything that I liked. It was really sweet and sugary and just didn't taste right. It tasted like the store brand sodas, where they would try to make Coke or Pepsi, and it wasn't anywhere close. Yeah. So what do you remember about New Coke?
I don't remember New Coke.
Okay.
I don't remember it. I don't know. I wasn't a big soda drinker.
Yeah.
I mean, if it was, what'd you say, like in late or early 80s?
Yeah, it was like mid 80s. Yeah, 85,
okay.
86.
So I was pretty young. I was only years old, so I probably wasn't allowed to drink soda at the time, to be honest.
Good for your parents. But is this anything you've ever heard about, Holly? I mean, normally
beyond what you talked about, no.
Normally, most people, if they hear about it today, they hear about it in like a college classroom or something. Like, oh boy, that was a stupid thing that they did back then. But at the time, Coca-Cola really thought it was a big deal that they needed to update their formula. It had been around for almost 100 years at that point, and it was, tastes were getting different, so they thought they needed to change, and they learned a pretty powerful lesson from that. One of those was that people really, really like things to stay the same, and another is that when they actually started coloring the cups, if they handed people a red cup with a liquid in it, they would assume it was Coca-Cola, and if they handed them a blue cup, they would assume it was Pepsi. And so it turned out that the cues from the brand were just as important as the flavor of the soda itself, and people tended to prefer the red cup more often than the blue cup, regardless of what was in it. And Coca-Cola very famously had to bring back the original formula. They called it Coca-Cola Classic after that. Now it's just Coca-Cola again, but the red and white can had to come back without the new logo, without the word just Coke. It had to be Coca-Cola again with the old logo, and that was probably one of the most telling and important moments in marketing, I think, in the 80s, back when the cola wars were at their height. I mean, they were getting Madonna and Elton John and Michael Jackson and all these other big celebrities to endorse soda, and it was a big deal. But it also showed that these connections went a lot deeper than just what people were seeing now. And I even remember going to McDonald's and they had new Coke, and they run out of regular Coke because everybody wanted regular Coke, and so they had to offer new Coke to people, and nobody wanted it. It was just that bad. Well, we were talking about photography earlier, and another brand that we had in the 80s and 90s that really disappeared over the last 10 or 15 years is Kodak.
Mm-hmm.
So Kodak, that they were the film company. I mean, if you bought film for your camera, it was going to most often be from Kodak.
Mm-hmm.
And if you went and got your film developed, it was most often going to be a place that had a big Kodak sign up. So it was a very familiar brand. It was yellow and kind of reddish orange sort of logo. What do you remember about Kodak?
Just getting my pictures developed and having cases of film and having to take it to the store and wait for, a few days later for it to come back. And like you said, having half your pictures be of nothing because we didn't have the digital back then. But I still kind of really enjoyed it. I liked getting photos developed and having them physically on hand. So, I mean, it's a bummer that we don't have those as often as we used to. But, I remember having to, how did you do? You had to take the thing out and did you pull it over? And
right. So there were these little canisters that you pulled out to load the film. And then when it was done, it would roll back up. You would just take the canister in to get it developed. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And they had the little digital or the throwaway ones.
Mm-hmm. And those came later, and Kodak definitely had their own line of those. I think some of the other brands did too.
Yeah.
The disposable cameras were, and those were very popular for vacations or weddings or places where like you didn't want to have to carry a camera around, or you were afraid someone would steal your nice camera, and that they were good for that. But did you ever use a film camera?
I did, yeah. And my dad is a very old-fashioned person. He had a flip phone for the longest time until it like literally broke in half, and he had to get something else. So he had a film camera for a good bit into my like childhood, and we have like albums, like photo albums at my mom's house of like all the pictures that we would take on vacations and stuff. So yeah.
I need to do that for my own family, my kids. I miss having the photo albums to look through. It's nice to every once in a while. I love that we were in that generation and that time frame to where we could go back and just look through photos like that. It's just so nice to have that physical, tangible moment. It brings back a lot of memories. But
and one thing I remember about Kodak as a brand too was, there were different kinds of film you could buy, and you had to be careful that you got the right kind of film for your camera. And if you got the wrong kind, you'd find out pretty quickly. But the other thing was the unexpectedness of what you were going to get. So when you took a picture in a film camera, you didn't know what it was going to look like. You knew what it was supposed to look like, but very often you get it back and it'd be blurry, or the light would be off, or people's eyes would be shining, or weird things would happen with these cameras, especially if you took pictures in low light. And so you would drop the canister off and wait a day or two. I mean, there were 1 hour photo places in some places you could go to, but you might wait a day or two a lot of the time and get your pictures back. And it was a surprise. You didn't know what you were going to get. You didn't know if anything had turned out. And especially if you had a cheaper camera, you couldn't rely on much of it to have turned out at all. So the unexpectedness is something that I think was really different from today's photography.
I remember one time when we went to go visit my grandparents, there was a hedgehog in their garden, and we took a picture of it. And when we got the pictures back, it was like double exposed with another picture. And so, there was I can't remember what the other picture was, but I just remember like being like, what is this?
It had those overlapping of photos, and then everybody's eyes would be beady red.
Right.
Little red eyeballs everywhere.
Notorious. His like in pictures, his eyes were always red. My mom always called it bunny eyes.
And they would also give you the negatives, which were super creepy to look at because they were the opposite colors, and everybody looked weird. And again, like unless you toggle something on your digital camera, we don't see that anymore today. Well, this has been a fun discussion, and I think one of the things that it really points to is these brands, like they have an intersection with our lives, and maybe we're not all familiar with all of them equally, but they intersect with our lives in all these different ways, and they go a lot deeper than just products that we buy or things that we see on the shelf. They really involve a lot of deep memories and a lot of deep experiences. And we're going to do this again for another episode. We're going to talk about some more brands. And I know one of them we're going to talk about is pretty infamous for ruining a lot of Christmases. So look forward to that. But thanks for joining us here on the Marketing Gateway. I'm Sean in St. Louis. We've got, again, Trish and Holly here. And thanks for listening.